My name's Amanda Decker, and I'm a nurse practitioner. I'm also a mom. I'm a wife. I am a farmer's daughter. I live on a family farm that has been in my family for almost a century. We lack like 5 years to be a near century farm. I'm also a friend. I am a coworker. I am a boss because I own my own business, and I'm a patient. And when I was first asked to give my lived experience, my inclination was to go to all the patient stories that I have accumulated over the years. And then I realized that the patient stories are my story. So I want you to hear from me and my lived experience and how the ripple effect starts in one place and ends in a completely different one. So at the age of 5, I was already struggling with my weight. I have very vivid memories of my grandfather, who I adore, pinching my cheeks and telling me how cute and chubby I was. And at the time, I wasn't necessarily offended, but I still remember kind of that ugh feeling that I got inside my gut. I was only 5, but I didn't want to be cute and chubby. I just wanted to be cute. The other thing that was happening at age 5 is I had psoriasis. In the early 80s, it was very uncommon for children to have psoriasis. This was something that was seen more in the adult population. I didn't know why until many years down the road why that was the case. I just thought I was an oddball. So at the age of 5, I became a chronic care patient for psoriasis, which is an inflammatory condition that is on your skin. Usually it hits a lot of the what we call extensor surfaces. So that's going to be your elbows, knees, things that get a lot of contact, which increases inflammation, which now also makes sense to me, but didn't at the age of 5. When it comes to my psoriasis and my weight, well, let's just start with weight. My weight yo-yoed up and down from the age of 5 to around the age of 30. There would be times when I would balloon up, as I call it, and then there'd be times when I would be essentially anorexic. So my weight would have this spectrum of about 60 to 65 pounds. And for someone who didn't even make 5'2", that's a big deal. Because when that upper end was there, I was in the obese range. And when that lower end was there, I was in the near underweight range. But it was this love-hate relationship with my body and food. I loved food, but I hated food because of what I knew it was doing to me. I loved my body because I needed my body, but I hated my body at the same time. I hated what it looked like. I hated how it felt. Throughout that time, 5 to 30, I never had a provider give me direct advice other than, oh, just eat better, or, oh, just eat less, or you need to be more active. Well, I could handle the eat less, and it got to near dangerous points at times. The moving more, I live on a farm. We didn't have video games. I was active. I got home from school and would go climb trees and run around and do whatever else we were doing on the farm. So that advice just didn't make sense to me. But I knew it didn't feel good and it didn't work well. And thus it left me just trying to fix it on my own. Going back to the psoriasis side of things, at 5, they started giving me every ointment that you could think of. We did light therapy. We did this nasty tar smelling stuff that my mom would scrub my scalp with and try to pick out the flakes with. There were steroids. There was vitamin D creams. None of it really worked. There were times when it was a little better and times when it was a little worse. But eventually we just kind of ran out of options every time we went to the dermatologist, so we stopped going. As an adult, I went back to the dermatologist because at that time I became a nurse practitioner and I knew there was other things out there, and I was put on medications that suppressed my immune system. At the time that I made the decision to go on medications to suppress my immune system to clear my skin of the psoriasis, it was on about 80% of my body. Now, I'm not going to say that 80% of my body was completely covered. There are individuals that are that way. But what I mean when we're talking in healthcare terms is we count in hands. A hand is a certain percentage of the body. And if you went over my body, there was a plaque of some type on at least 80% of those hands all over my body. The worst places were throughout my scalp, my ears, my back had several patches, my arms, most upper and lower, my legs, upper and lower, and I would occasionally get patches on my abdomen. It also affected my toenails, specifically my big toenails were the ones that it loved to attach. And it wasn't fungus, but they were still coming off because all the psoriasis was under there. But I went on that medication to suppress my immune system, and we'll go back later down the road and revisit that medication and how I got off of that medication. So I feel like I was failed by the healthcare system. Doctors really couldn't give me good answers, and they sure didn't have good suggestions on how to fix the things that were ailing me. I knew from a young age I wanted to go into medicine. I had this strong desire to help people. I wanted to help people feel better and get rid of the things that bothered them. And maybe that stems from the problems that I had, the psoriasis that I had from a young age, and no one could help me get rid of. I don't really know, but I know that's the path that I wanted to take. So in 2005, I graduated nurse practitioner school and I entered primary care. I always wanted to be in the clinic, outpatient clinic. I never wanted to be in the hospital. And I am a dang good nurse practitioner. But I practiced conventional medicine. I was falling into that same trap that all of the doctors that had treated me had fallen into. Oh, you have high blood pressure? I'm sorry about that. Here's your next pill. I'll see you in 3 months. Oh, you have diabetes? I'm sorry. You should probably eat less sugar because it's sweet, And then here's your next medicine. I'll see you in 3 months. In 3 months, oh, your A1C is worse. So here's your next medicine. About 10 years in, I was burnout. I wasn't making anybody better. Well, I take that back. I was making a few people better. If you had a urinary tract infection or a sinus infection, I was your lady. I could fix that. I could make that better. But all the people with chronic issues who didn't have answers and just kept getting worse, I felt like I was part of the problem and I didn't know what to do about it. I actually considered getting out of medicine. But around that same time, I was having an awakening of my own. And I love the term awakening because it's recalling and remembering all these things that you should have known and putting those pieces together, and all of these aha moments come. So I decided that the previous advice I'd been given and what I'd been given about my personal weight journey was not working. At that point, I had already had my first child. His name is Griffin. He is now 16. But I started thinking, okay, my great grandmother used to tell me when I was little and having my cheeks pinched about being chubby, if you stop eating cookies and cakes and biscuits, then you'll lose weight. I said, I can do that. So I stopped eating cookies and cakes and biscuits, any type of bread or anything that resembled cookies and cakes and biscuits. And then it moved into not just that, but as a healthcare provider at the time, I said, well, potatoes are kind of also like cookies and cakes and biscuits. You can make bread out of them. They're starchy, so I quit those too. And for the first time in my life that I could remember, my weight was stable and my relationship with food was changed. I could eat food and feel nourished and feel full, and my weight was stable. I was getting healthier and I was having, like I said, this awakening. But at that same time, I also had some tragedy happen. So we wanted to have other children, and I got pregnant quite quickly. Unfortunately, I had a miscarriage, and it was around 12 weeks in gestation, but the child had not lived past 6 weeks gestation. So my OBGYN called it a failed miscarriage. I hate that word. I really hate the word failed miscarriage because you couldn't carry your child right and you couldn't even have a miscarriage right. It just makes you feel like an utter failure. I'm not going to go through all the details of that, but it was a 2-year journey of multiple other miscarriages. And what turns out to have happened is at that first miscarriage, when it was failed, and then it took 3 months to completely resolve that failed miscarriage, I developed a lot of scar tissue in my uterus, and I could not build a lining, and I couldn't sustain a pregnancy. One of the things that I talk about quite a bit is my faith. And I had faith at that time, but it was a little shaky. I was still trying to rely on myself to make things happen. I had a miracle happen. I was headed to get an IUD because I didn't want pregnancy. I had this thing called Asherman's syndrome. So Asherman syndrome is the scarring of the uterus, and um, my doctor told me I had less than a 10% chance of actually conceiving, and even less than 10% of the chance of that conception making it out of the first trimester. So I was headed to get an IUD because I didn't want to deal with those odds anymore. 2 years of multiple surgeries and trying to figure it out, it was enough. And I woke up one morning and I was supposed to have my IUD placed then like 2 days later. And in Tennessee, we had this huge ice storm at the time. All the electricity was out, but I woke up and I was like, I'm pregnant. I went and took a test with a flashlight in the bathroom. Bam, I'm pregnant. I was like, oh crap, here we go again. Another miscarriage, another heartbreak. Here we go again. But I'm telling you, God did a miracle in my life. And my doctors worked wonderfully with me. And I carried that baby not just past the first trimester, but to full term, and almost had her in the car on the way to the hospital. She's my miracle. So her name is Willow, and she is my miracle. Why I'm bringing that up now with this idea of the lived experience is one is it's part of my experience. And it was a time when the medical world really did come through for me. But I also believe that the changes that I started a couple years before, when I removed the starches, the cookies, the cakes, the biscuits, the potatoes, all of that, reduced my inflammation to the point that I could not have carried her otherwise. Doctors won't fully say that. They still say they don't even know how I had this child. But I firmly believe, had I not already started working on my inflammation through a way that didn't make sense to me at the time and connect the dots with the inflammation, that she wouldn't be part of us. The next part of my journey dives into the clinical side and still my health journey too. I told you I'm coming back around to that whole medicine that suppresses my immune system. But I remained weight stable. So I had Willow and I quickly lost the weight right back. I remained off of grains and starches and things like that and ate a moderately low carb diet, even though at the time I didn't call it a low carb diet. I just called it whole foods diet that was free of a lot of starches. But I quickly reached my pre-pregnancy weight. Seriously, within about 6 weeks, I was back there and very weight stable. Felt great. I changed jobs around that time because I needed some more time at home. And I started thinking about my health transformation and thinking about my clients. And I was asking myself some pretty hard questions at the time. One is, do I leave medical practice because still I'm not making anybody better? Or two, do I change things? And then I started thinking, well, I've made my weight stable through making some dietary changes. Why can't I help other clients do that? And I had a very good friend of mine at the time who worked in endocrinology. And she looked at me and she said, Amanda, you know you're doing low carb. I said, no, I am not doing low carb. That is dangerous. No one should ever do that diet. You've heard Atkins is bad. She goes, you're doing low carb. No. So I went and researched it, and lo and behold, I was doing low carb, and I didn't even know it at the time. But then as I'm researching and I'm coming across studies and realizing this is not dangerous. This is a medical treatment that has been used for hundreds of years. Why can I not use it in my own patients? And then I said, but every healthcare provider out there that I've talked to tells me that this is dangerous. If I do this, somebody's going to sue me. So I decided to get more education. I went back and achieved a certificate of advanced education from the Obesity Medicine Society so that I could focus more on weight management in my practice. I became the first female certified as a metabolic health practitioner through the SMHP, or the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. I am board certified through the ANA as a ketogenic or certified ketogenic nutrition specialist. And then recently, I also got certified with the Nutrition Network as a nutrition network practitioner. I wanted to put education and authority behind what I was about to start doing with clients. But that still didn't make it easy, because I had this horrible fear of being sued. And this was my livelihood. This was my family's livelihood. But on the other side, I was about to leave this livelihood if something didn't give. So I started quietly giving it out to a couple of patients. Here's a handout. Let's try this. Why don't you just try, hey, cutting those cookies and cokes and breads and things out? And people started getting better. I started having to take people off of medication, which is something I had not done previously in my career. It was blowing my mind. Then I became more public with it. I started a Facebook page and a YouTube channel and all these things. And I started helping people outside of my little environment. Practice was fun again. Life was fun. Life was good. And I'm going to pause here and I'm going to tell you about a quick patient story. So this lady's in her mid 60s. She comes to see me for weight management. She has horrible rheumatoid arthritis. Her inflammatory markers, and a marker called CK, which is creatine kinase and marker of inflammation, was off the charts. It was the highest that I have ever seen. In fact, it was, I think, in the 5,000 range, and it's supposed to be in single digit range to be under control. So she wasn't moving well. She was overweight. She also had high blood pressure. And I'm looking at her and I say, ma'am, you have insulin resistance. She's like, what do you mean? Doctors say I'm fine. I don't have diabetes. I said, ma'am, you have all these markers of metabolic syndrome, increased abdominal girth, high blood pressure, your triglycerides are a little high, your HDL is a little low. I believe you have insulin resistance, and I would like for you to do a low carb diet. And she was at that point where she said, well, I've done Weight Watchers. I've done calorie counting. I can't move because of my arthritis. I'm about to be in a wheelchair. My provider tells me I'm about to be in a wheelchair. No one can give me answers. The healthcare system had failed her. It failed her. She was on her way to disability. But she said, okay, I'll give it a try. Within 3 months, her inflammatory markers were in the teens. She was now moving well. At the end of an 18-month journey, we now had her off of 3 blood pressure medicines, 1 antidepressant, 1 anti-inflammatory medication, and her rheumatologist said, I don't know what you're doing, but please don't stop it. She self-initiated exercise because she finally felt good enough to move. This is a lady the healthcare system had failed. And because I listened to wisdom from my great-grandmother, and then I had a friend that said, you know, this is low carb, and then I went and got more advanced education, I could confidently give this lady advice that I underlyingly knew was going to decrease her inflammation, and it was going to help her lose weight. I honestly had no idea it was going to be that dramatic. It's a pretty awesome story. Let's get back to the psoriasis side of things. So even though I was low carb and I was very much whole foods, I still had psoriasis. And it was actually early in my low carb journey that I was on that medication to suppress my immune system. It was before I really knew the full scape of low carb. But that ugly COVID hit, I'm sure you guys remember that. And at the clinic that I was working in, we all had to take shifts in the COVID unit. Now, when I say COVID unit, it was a walk-in, not for the people in the hospital that were that sick, that they would drive up, we would test them, I would assess them in their car and send them off. but it scared me. This was a pandemic killing people across our world. And here I am with two young children on a medication that suppresses my immune system to help my psoriasis, but it also would impair my ability to fight off infection. It scared me. And so what I did was I leaned back into the education that I had. So I was the ketogenic nutrition specialist and the obesity medicine specialist and the SMHP. I didn't have the nutrition network one yet. But I had heard that carnivore diet could be used as an elimination diet and could greatly lower inflammation. And I knew that psoriasis had an inflammatory and a genetic component. And I said, okay, I love my beautiful skin. For the first time in my life, I'm a normal weight with completely 100% clear skin, but I love my kids more and I have to get off this medicine. So I started strict carnivore. So first 30 days, beef, bacon, butter, eggs, water, black coffee only. Coffee could not be part of my, it had to be part of my journey. I couldn't get rid of it. So beef, bacon, butter, eggs, water, black coffee. That was all that I had. So no cheese, no dairy of any kind, just the meat products. My cow was my own cow. My beef came from my farm and it was grass-fed, grass-finished. I was fortunate enough to have my cow grown right across the road from me there. And after 30 days, I slowly added back other meats. So I started with salmon, and then I slowly added like free-range organic chicken. I did other meats like venison, some wild game, things like that. And then started with low inflammatory veggies and slowly increased them, treating it almost like a mom would treat her baby, introducing foods to them. In that time, I found that things like nightshades and cinnamon were not my friends, or cinnamon really not my friend, but nightshade vegetables, I could do like a tomato here and there. I guess it's more of a fruit, but I could do a tomato, but I couldn't do it 2 days in a row. And I had to keep it to a small amount. So I can do them just low. And if I eat them too much, I start to itch. Peanuts, same way. If I eat them too much, I start to itch. And they're in the nightshade family there. And so it was through that process I learned about using this diet approach as an elimination diet to find out your specific nutritional plan. And since my journey doing that, I've used the carnivore diet multiple times in clinic as an elimination diet. And some clients don't come off of it. They just feel like they feel so much better there that there's no reason for them to go on out. So I've been off of Stelara, that's the name of the medication that I was on, since the year 2020. And my skin remains relatively clear, except for a tiny, one little spot at the very base of my scalp. I had a very stressful couple of months and it popped up and has not went away. But I'll take it. 1-ish% of my body versus 80% of my body, and medication free and weight stable. This is a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing. I talked in the beginning about the ripple effect. So when I first started eating low carb, I was the only one in my household to eat low carb. I was the only one in my family to eat low carb. They all thought I was a little cuckoo. And yes, I would bring my own food to family dinners, and I would also bring dishes that everybody else could share on, but they didn't really understand it. However, what started with me has moved its way through my family. At one point, my mom had reached the diabetic threshold, an A1C of 6.5, and these were US numbers. And she had osteopenia, almost osteoporosis, which is a thinning of the bones nearing a level that can be dangerous for bone fracture. She looked at me and she said, I don't want to have diabetes. My mom had diabetes. My mom had Alzheimer's. I don't want those things. I was like, well, they're very much connected, Mom. If you have diabetes, if this continues, you will be that grandma. You'll be my mom down the road with Alzheimer's. And she's like, I don't want to do that. I said, okay, here's what you do. You start a low carb diet. We get wheat and sugar completely out of your life. And these are the vegetables you eat. And when I teach a low carb diet in clinic, I do it in a very simple way. It's a stoplight. If it's on your green list, you're good to go. If it's on your yellow list, 1 or 2 servings, not more than that. If it's on your red list, please don't even look at the red list. Let's look the other direction. And so she followed this list and she lost around 30 pounds. She reversed her prediabetes. Her A1C is now in the mid fives, and her bones thickened up on their own. Ripple effect. My dad also lost weight and is improving his health. My younger sister now does a low carb diet to control menstrual irregularities and migraines and IBS. My older brother now follows a semi low carb diet. He's not consistent all the time, but he has Crohn's disease, another inflammatory condition, and he manages it without medications. So, this ripple effect, something that started with wisdom of my great grandmother and then moved through me, has affected my entire family, has infected and my entire patient population. I almost forgot. You know that little girl Willow that I told you that I had? She's also low carb. She has IBS. I found it at the age of 6. I was trying to be the mom that gave her all the kid foods, and I should have known better at that time. I knew better for myself. I was feeding myself great and feeding her junk. But she was going to the bathroom like 6 times in a day. And I said, Mom, Willow, are you doing this every day? She's like, yeah, it's just normal, right? I'm like, no, it's not normal. So we cut all of the wheat out of her diet and went to only using a little natural honey with her. And within a week, her gut was fine. She did amazing. It blew my mind, blew my mind. It shouldn't, after that long, it should not blow my mind anymore, but it still does. Every time I see someone improve remarkably, it's like, dadgum. And it just leads me to this thinking, why has the medical system failed so many people? Why did we used to have all this wisdom of knowing what nutrition should be? And we've gotten to here to where it's just normal to be sick. And it breaks my heart. And then looking at medicine and seeing that, yes, I was helping people get better, but I was stressed again because I only got 15 to 20 minutes per patient and was seeing 25 to 30 patients a day. How much life change can you get in? The whole system is just broken because we as providers only have that 15 minutes of doing it in the insurance model. That's why it's, here's your quick prescription. I'll see you next time. That's all we literally have time to do. If you want to get in a physical exam, if your nurse has to do vital signs, and if you want to ask about any physical symptoms that you're doing, writing a prescription is about all you had time to do. And you were still at home at night doing your charts because you didn't have time to do them during the day just to break even. And I'm not saying life wasn't good and wasn't paid well. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is the system is broken to the point that patients cannot get good quality care. And so about 2 years ago, I reached another one of those points where I said, I can't keep working in this system. I, in all good conscience, cannot continue down this because I'm helping people, but at what cost? It's a cost to me and a cost to my family for sure. It's also a cost to the client because they're not fully getting the care that they needed. So in 2024, I formed Clear Path Medical. It is my own practice. It does not contract with any insurance companies whatsoever. It is a practice where I get 30 minutes to an hour with every client. And I have time between clients to, look through their chart and go over their labs and be ready to have that encounter or research something that we talked about last time that I need more knowledge in because there's a gap there. And I go home at night and I spend time with my kids instead of time with my computer. That's how practice should be. And in that, I've met some other remarkable people who have also been failed by the medical system. Another patient that I met just in the last couple of months, so I'm going to say January or February of 2025, she's in her mid-60s. She was over 200 pounds overweight when she started her journey. She had already eaten carnivore for a while, maybe at least a year and a half, lost around 100 pounds, but completely stalled. She says, I'm watching my blood sugars and they're constantly just slightly high. Even when I fast, they're slightly high. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Do I not get butter? Do I have to eat all fat and no protein to get my sugars under control? She goes, and I can't lose weight and I don't know what else to do. And over the course of a couple of times of me sitting with her, an hour-long first consult and at least another 30-minute long consult and multiple messages back to back, which is nothing that I could have done in a traditional medical environment. I said, I think we should test your cortisol levels. She said, whatever you think, I'm game. And she has Cushing's. And when we started going over the symptoms of Cushing's, she said, I have had this for 30 years. I have went to no less than like 10 doctors and no one could give me answers. Some of them specialists, some of them general practitioners. She's like, but here's a symptom and it's Cushing's related, and here's a symptom and it's Cushing's related for 30 years. And there are chronic things that happen when you have Cushing's that we can't undo at this point. We can make better, but we can't undo. And it hits me. This is why I had to get out of that system. Because had she walked through my door in the traditional medical system, I'm not sure that I would have ended in the same place with her as I did in this model. Hopefully another life changed, but it is still that ripple effect. What started as my individual health journey led to an awakening. And I love that word, an awakening. And when you have an awakening, it is not just about one thing. It is a blossoming out of multiple things in your life. So my awakening affected my personal health. It affected my family's health. It affected my education. It affected my medical practice, which then affected my clients. There's another thing that's also affected, though. In this whole journey of awakening that I had, I also realized I have to tell as many people as I can about the true nutritional knowledge that should have been told all along, and that there is a better way. But as a nurse practitioner, I'm seeing one person at a time. Yeah, I'm doing the YouTube things, but I'm not as famous as some people yet. It's a slow growing process. By the way, if you have not followed me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those wonderful things, you should. See that little @Decker less carbs at the bottom of the screen? That's how you can find me on all social media platforms. Check it out. But I wanted the opportunity to reach more people. So I created an event called Low Carb for Better Health. At this point, when I'm recording this, we are planning our 4th year. And every year, the last 2 years, not every year, the last 2 years, we've welcomed over 300 individuals to the largest little convention center. It is the largest little convention center in my hometown. We have packed it out and we have gotten together and spread the word about low carb and about proper nutrition and about stress and about exercise and community and all these things that are so important to the totality of health. So every year I get the privilege now of, some of them are my clients that come, but some of them are just people that want to be around other people to inspire them to get the knowledge that's there. The awakening, the ripple effect. Are you seeing it? Because I see it when I look back through. I see one building block moving on to the next. I hope you've enjoyed my story. Like I said, check out my social medias if you want to find out more about me and about my story. I've got lots of videos on there, on YouTube, that kind of thing. If you are in the United States and you're in one of the 22, almost 23 states that I'm licensed in at this point, I would love to connect with you about being your healthcare provider. You can go to our website, clearpathmedical.net, to find out more about me and my team. That's clearpathmedical.net. You can also find out more about my team and I on social media. It has been my privilege to share this story, and I hope that it inspires you in whatever way that you need it, whether it is as the mom, the wife, the daughter, the farmer's daughter, the nurse practitioner, the boss, whatever it is, wherever you are. I hope you're seeing that ripple effect in your own life. And if you haven't come to your awakening yet, I hope you're opening up your heart and opening up your mind to receive the knowledge that you need to have that for your